Let me get notifications out and then we're going to get started. I want to talk today about weight, weight loss, because a lot of people are suffering with weight and weight loss and they don't understand why. And then I want to give you some truths and some reasons why all that stuff isn't working for you. Give me just 1 second here. Here we go. Okay. So now you guys, first of all, how many of you guys have been suffering with or struggling with weight loss? Like you just can't seem to lose weight, or maybe you're like, why are they talking about insulin resistance? Because this person is really thin and they got diabetes, and that person was really heavy and they got diabetes. I'm going to talk about what happens in your body. But first off, before I get started, how many of you guys have been told by a doctor, a clinician, somebody that the fat cells you have when you're born are the only fat cells you'll ever have, and that they just grow or shrink, and that it's just you're heavy because your fat cells are too full? Because that's a lie that I was told and I believed, and I worked in medical offices, and it's something they talked about a lot. I've worked with some people doing red light therapy, and their doctors were saying the truth is you only have the same fat cells that you were born with, and we just got to address those fat cells. And that's not true. So hang out with me because I'm going to explain this whole thing, why some people are heavy and not diabetic, why some people are thin and not diabetic, the differences between men and women, and what insulin resistance is, so y'all can start to get healthier realistically. Okay. So for me, it's like I lost 55 pounds and I was able to keep it off in menopause and after having lost my gallbladder. Why do I mention my gallbladder? Because that was related to insulin resistance as well. And ladies, if you have a gallbladder issue, it today's not a gallbladder talk, but it amazes me how many women are told to have their gallbladder pulled out after pregnancy because they're having problems. And yet, what they don't tell you is that that loss of gallbladder can make you way more sick and less likely to be able to maintain your weight. So I mentioned the gallbladder part because it gets harder and harder to lose weight or maintain your weight when you have no gallbladder. So there's some things you can do like enzymes and all of that, but just know that. Hey, I can't even say your name. VG. I can't even pronounce it. I wish I could. But anyway, so all right, so let's take a look. If you've ever felt like no matter what you do, your body just refuses to lose weight and your blood sugars stay high, or maybe you're gaining weight and you don't have high blood sugars, it's insulin resistance. Why I talk about insulin resistance being at the root of our weight gain is, yeah, everybody talks about the whole energy in, energy out theory, which is great because there's some truth that when you're getting too much energy, more energy than your cells can use, you're going to put weight on. But what transports that excess energy to the cells is insulin. And in many, many people, it's not just that you're gorging yourself and you're taking in way more energy than you need. It's that your body starts to being able to starts shutting down to the cues that it needs energy. So insulin resistance comes like this. You eat food, and a lot of that food, especially your carbohydrates, turns into glucose in the system. And I say especially because fats don't really make a change in your glucose level. But do you know that your proteins can make a change in your glucose level? Because that's a truth for many people that they just don't understand. When we look at your big pieces of your food, fats don't really spike your glucose. Proteins spike it a little bit, about half as much as carbohydrates do. Refined carbohydrates spike it a lot. So carbohydrates are fruits, vegetables, grains, all of those things. There are some things that can be in, especially in the plant world, that can have a little protein and still be a carbohydrate. But understand that any of that is turning to glucose in your body. When you're getting too much glucose, and unfortunately in the world we live in today, we have all these packaged boxed foods that are creating high levels of glucose in our system. So is it really a you thing, or is it the food industry thing? Is it that we're given food that's not really working with our body? Because I think it's the latter for most of us. And it goes into why you're so hungry all the time and why you can't keep your appetite down and why you're craving sugar and all of that. Insulin resistance is at the root of all of that. But so you've eaten, you've spiked your glucose or your blood sugars, and it takes about 2 hours for them to spike. It takes about 4 hours for them to come back down. But in the meantime, your body says, "Ooh, there's sugar in the bloodstream. We need to get that into the cells for energy." And so it cues your pancreas to create insulin. Now, insulin's job is to shuttle that energy to the cells, and then it acts like the key that opens the door of the cell and says, "Here's your energy, here's your package." Okay. Um, but with insulin resistance, that lock and key just doesn't work anymore. And so insulin's not able to get energy in the cells. So maybe your body needs the energy, but now you're in a position where your body's not using the energy and you're having this insulin resistance with a number of different issues. So weight gain, brain fog, achy joints, skin tags, migraines, a number of things link into insulin resistance. Um, so does anybody feel like that could be them? Because here's the truth. A Tufts University study in 2022 said that 93% of us have a cardiometabolic disorder, which is rooted in insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is really like the bottom line to that cardiometabolic disorder. And other doctors are saying that 99% of us have an insulin disorder. It just hasn't gotten as bad as that cardiometabolic disorder yet. And then we start looking at how many people actually have diabetes, and it's growing across the world. So if we could all understand that the one thing that's driving your weight, diabetes, brain fog, the big belly, joint pain, all of that is insulin resistance. Now, I want to pause for a second because I'm going to talk about a protocol that helped me and is helping hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But that study that I talked about from Tufts University, the crazy thing that I found out just recently is that Tufts University is primarily backed by Big Pharma. They get a lot of donations from Big Pharma. So they put out this study, there's some truth in it, but then what do? They turn around and say, "Oh, this is why we need these medications, those ones that you're jabbing in or pills are less likely, but that they're saying this is the reason why." 93% of us have a cardiometabolic disorder, so we need these medications to help address it for everyone. And that's not true. Those medications are probably making things worse, making you put out more insulin and making you more insulin resistant. Your cells are not able to use it, and you get worse after time. You have to up the dose of the medication, or if you go off them, you're just sick again because nobody's addressing the root cause, and that's insulin resistance. Now, one of the reasons we're not catching insulin resistance, before I get back into the fat thing, is we don't have a test, or we do have a test for insulin, but doctors don't run it often because there's not a magic medication that they can hand you to address your insulin. So can you have a blood test that shows how sensitive you are to insulin? Yes, you can. But doctors don't run it because they're not nutritionists. They have not had a nutritional course. 80% of doctors have not had a nutritional course in their training at all. So if there's not a medication attached to it, they don't want to do that test because they don't know how to address it. So there's that truth. Now let's get back into insulin resistance. I want you to think about insulin resistance. Then we're going to get back into the fat part. So think about insulin as the key to unlocking your cells. Remember I said that. So when insulin resistance sets in, it's like your locks are become rusty and they just no longer work. And so you try more and more keys to get that lock open, but nothing you do will open that cell door. And that's insulin resistance. And over time, it leads to glucose building up in the bloodstream, just like a traffic congestion, because every door is shut and that glucose can't get anywhere. Now you're starting to have high blood sugar levels and then eventually being diagnosed with diabetes type 2. So goddess girl, you have to eat right too. You're type 2 and found out by not doing so, meds won't work right. So yeah, you need to eat right too, but we're going to go over the protocol I use and why it's addressing our modern food environment, because I've had people who are pescatarian, vegetarian, all still struggling with insulin resistance. Now, they're buying their food from the farmer's market. They don't eat the bagged boxed barcoded stuff, and yet they're still having problems with insulin resistance. We're going to go over that in just a little bit. Yes, you need to eat better. I just went shopping today. I buy most of my groceries in a monthly thing because I hate going to the grocery store. But in my cart, I'm more carnivoristic. I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. So in my cart was a lot of, there were some beans and stuff, but there was a lot of chicken, a couple of racks of chicken, some chicken wings because my grandson loves them. I make them at home. Some ground chicken, some strip steak. That was the bulk of my groceries today. Yeah, some vegetables and stuff thrown in, but there wasn't a lot of bagged boxed stuff. However, there was some. My grandson loves ham sandwiches when he's with me every weekend. We have them. I eat bread. I try not to eat it every day. I don't eat a lot of rice. I don't eat a lot of that. But you don't have to not do it. You don't have to cut it out completely to get your insulin resistance under control. You have to understand what's happened to our food and why you're getting sick in the first place. So let's take a little short dive into that. Our foods, because we're going to talk about the solution that I used to help me in a little bit. But the truth is that our foods are less dense in nutrients. Many doctors are starting to come out and talk about the fact that even our organic foods are about 40 to 70% less dense in nutrients. Remember those cell doors that aren't taking insulin in? It's not just that they're not taking in the glucose that gives them energy. They're now less proficient at taking in other nutrients. So now we have a food system that's been modified, that's not giving you nutrients, think vitamins and minerals. And now with insulin resistance, those cells are not even getting in the right amount of vitamins and minerals. So we have a double whammy on your nutritional intake. One of the big keys to keeping glucose down so that you can keep your insulin levels up, spoiler alert, is fiber. It's the big thing that they've taken out of our foods, why we have glucose spikes. The right fibers will help you manage your glucose levels. The right fibers will help you slow down that delivery of sugar into your system, so now insulin resistance isn't happening. I want you to also understand every time you spike your glucose, your insulin goes up a little higher because it's got to take it out to the cells. But your glucose levels can drop quickly within about 4 hours. Your insulin levels won't drop for about 8 hours after you've eaten. So now you've still got insulin in the bloodstream and you're hungry because it hasn't been able to get energy into the cells, and it just isn't working. So what about fiber from Metamucil? Metamucil is a one-source fiber, and it's not designed to do the job of helping your blood glucose come down. The fiber I'm going to talk to you guys about has 7 different sources of soluble and insoluble fiber, and that helps wrap up the carbs and keep them from entering your bloodstream all at once. So it's not like a single source of fiber is the thing. And a lot of people will eat salads before they have the rest of their meal. That's great, but it's not enough and it's not the right kinds of fiber. So no, I don't recommend Metamucil. In fact, I'll do this one too. I have a woman who did the system. She was trying to get her system or the protocol. She was trying to get her husband to do it because it was working so well for her. And he kept resisting. And he just kept taking Metamucil in his lunchbox every day because he just wanted to be regular. He was diabetic, but he wasn't as concerned. He wasn't as convinced. One day he ran out of Metamucil and he took one of the packets of our fiber in his, or she packed him in his lunchbox. And he came home that very day because he could tell the difference in how the fiber was reacting in his body after being a daily user of Metamucil. He now does the protocol, has his weight down, has his regularity, and has his insulin resistance under control. So I'm just going to block some people who are stupid comment people, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so I hope that answers some of those questions, and thanks for asking them because everybody needs to hear this stuff, right? I didn't know a lot of this stuff, and I worked in medical clinics, and doctors weren't giving me the answers, and I didn't know until I got better and started wondering why this one protocol helped with so much stuff. So we're going to talk about that. I've lost 55 pounds, kept it off with no gallbladder in menopause, and I wasn't able to lose more than 5 pounds, even eating clean and doing all the, like, I had blenders and I had um, spreadsheets. I'm a spreadsheet person of all the stuff to do. And I was an athlete and I just couldn't lose weight. And I was frustrated, like, what the hell? What's going on? Why am I eating better than this girl next to me who's so thin and she eats junk all the time? And I can't eat anything that she eats or I blow up like a balloon. So the Goddess Girl, the products that I'm talking about, you can just go to my profile, and at the very top, there's a link right under the red lights. When you go to that landing page, the very first selection in there is the protocol. It will tell you a little bit more about it while I'm talking about the rest of this. Also, we're doing a live stream tonight. I will be if TikTok allows me to, I will be restreaming a live stream where doctors. We have doctors, nurses, we have clinical nutritionists who are all sold on this system, and they will be talking about it tonight. So if you want more information like that, come tonight. I do them occasionally, but this is science backed. We have metabolic scientists who work on just finding ways to more naturally address this thing of insulin resistance, and that's where this comes from. You have low blood sugar, can't have sugar at all. It makes you exhausted. So, Jessica, I there's like so many things that run through my head with that right now. One thing is, and I am not telling you to do anything different, but when we become insulin resistant, we're really difficult. Our body has a real difficult time addressing sugar. So when you have a high level of insulin, I'm not saying this is you, but for most people, if you have a high level of insulin and you eat sugar, insulin's going to do its best job to get that out of your bloodstream and put away. So a lot of people will see a blood sugar spike and they'll have a little bit of energy, but immediately their blood sugar drops because that's insulin doing its job, getting that sugar out of the bloodstream. Now you end up with low blood sugar and you just have this energy high and low. And maybe you feel like you're in a pinball machine with your energy, but insulin is a big part of that. Fats, you guys, and the other source of fuel for us, the other source of energy for us is actually fats. I was watching a guy talk about, he was making some kind of beef and cheese dish, and he was talking about low fat this, low fat that. You guys stop it. Stop doing low fat stuff. That's not putting the fat on your body. Sugar is, and actually you need the fats. They give your brain and your body energy, and they can make you more satiated so you're not as likely to overeat than sugar does. Okay. Hey, vlogs. So, all right, if you've been struggling with any of it, hang on because we're going to go over it. So I want you to think about if you've ever gained weight in places that you never used to, even without changing your diet. Hang out for a second, comment, drop a heart or a one in the comments if this sounds familiar to you. You started gaining weight, eating the same things, doing the same stuff, and you don't know why this is happening all of a sudden. Okay. So insulin is not only a glucose delivery hormone, it's a fat storing hormone. Insulin, when you have high levels of it all the time, you become resistant, it's anabolic. It's always anabolic. And anabolic means that it wants things to grow. So it's trying to build more in your body than when you're in a fasted state or not eating high amounts of sugar. But what happens is it's blocking you from breaking down fat. It wants to hold on to that. It wants to take that energy and store it. If the cells are saying no because they're resistant to insulin, guess where it's going to go? Guess where all that glucose goes? It goes in your storage unit, and your storage unit is your fat cells. So now insulin is taking this sugar that it can't use in the cells for energy and shoving it in your fat cells. And now you're gaining weight and you're being told to eat every 2 hours. And remember, every time you eat, you're spiking your insulin. And so now you have a high insulin level all the time, and it takes at least 8 hours for that insulin to come down so your body can go through this process of burning fat, but you're never giving it the chance to. So you're putting on more and more fat. You can't burn it. You're trying to exercise and do all these things. And I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with that exercise like crazy and they maybe lose a little bit of weight, but they just can't seem to lose the weight, and it's because they're constantly spiking their insulin. As an athlete, I was told to, eat bananas and eat all this stuff before you go work out. That's a fallacy too, you guys. Your body will better consume carbs and use them up if you wait till after you eat to take them in. When you preload with carbs, you're shutting down fat burning in your body and you're shutting down your body being able to use fat as energy. So stop it. Stop it. Unless you're really thin and you just need the energy for your workout, great. But the protocol also increases stamina and energy throughout, but especially in athletes. I want to talk about that 10 to 15% increase in energy. So no more bangs, no more Red Bulls, no more any of that. You have a sustained natural energy and you're allowed to be in a fat burning state because you're not loading up with bananas and all kinds of carby stuff before you work out. So I want you to imagine your fat cells like storage units. I mentioned that, right? And insulin is the truck that's delivering those packages into the storage unit. If your cells are insulin resistant and the trucks can't get the energy into the rest of the cells, it's just going to keep dumping packages into the storage unit. And now you have not just a storage unit, you have a storage warehouse, and you're getting heavier and heavier because your body thinks that the shelves are empty and it just wants to hold on to these packages because it's going to need them. But we never allow the storage unit to get packages out. We're just constantly putting packages in and you're getting heavier. So even when you're overflowing, your storage unit, that storage warehouse now is just getting fuller and fuller and fuller. Maybe you have to build another warehouse. We're going to talk about that too. So when your body is insulin resistant, it's like your fat cells are on lockdown. Hey, Maria. And it's refusing to release the stored fat or those packages. But how do you fix it? Well, the protocol that I talk about and some intermittent fasting. Oh my God, I said a dirty word, but we're going to talk about how easy that can be too. You can get rid of a lot of that fat. So I have a buddy, Jason. He was over 463 pounds when he met me. He was being told by his doctors to do gastric band surgery. He was told to be put on medications. He was resistant to all of those things because something in his gut said, this isn't the way to go. But he was sick and he was literally dying and he was 463 pounds and he didn't know what else to do. And he saw me on a live just like this. We had a little conversation. I explained everything to him. He started the system. And guess what? 3 years later, he's lost over 200 pounds. No medications, no injections, none of the stuff that could make him even sicker, no surgery. He lost the weight that his doctor and him used to fight over, and he did it naturally. And did he have to get rid of all carbs? No. Did he modify his diet a little bit? Yeah. Did he make it unsustainable for him? Nope. But he's lost over 200 pounds and got his diabetes under control just by following this protocol. Okay. So if we're going to talk about that towards the end, I'm going to go over the protocol a little bit. We'll go into in depth this evening with a doctor on the call who's talking about it, but I'll go over it in a little bit. So I want you to understand this. There's a reason why some people get diabetic and they're thin. And some people are extremely overweight and they're not even diabetic yet. Their blood sugars are not. They're not, but they're putting on weight. So how is that happening? If I just said that insulin is a fat storage hormone, then why is it that some people only store a little bit of fat and they become insulin resistant and or diabetic, and other people store a lot of fat and they become diabetic? Well, there's the capacity of your fat cells. That's hypertrophy, right? So it's your cells are getting bigger, they're filling up. But did you know, I mentioned this at the beginning, that your fat cells can also duplicate, and that's called hyperplasticity. So now as your fat cells are getting full, your body goes, oh shoot, we need to store the rest of this energy that they're bringing in. So we got to create more of those cells. Now we're building warehouses, right? So now somebody looks extremely obese and they have yet to be diagnosed as diabetes, while somebody else who does not have fat cells. Hey, Jason, I just talked about you. This is Jason, over 200-pound weight loss, just amazing job with this protocol. But now the person who doesn't have this ability to replicate fat cells stays thinner, and as their fat cells get full, it starts spilling that glucose back out into the bloodstream. Now the blood sugars are up, now they're diabetic. So your size doesn't indicate the health in your cells always, right? Somebody who's extremely overweight just has the propensity, yes, you, Jason, the propensity to put on extra fat cells to store even more, where somebody else may not have that. Okay. So as your fat cells get full, because insulin's dumping the excess energy there, they either are done and you're the type of person who can't do more, so you become diabetic, or the sugar starts spilling back out and the body says, let's make more fat cells to store more fat. And you just get better, bigger and bigger, but you never get diagnosed as diabetic until you're huge. Okay. There's some interesting things with that. Um, Men are more likely to become diabetic at a smaller size than women. Women often grow bigger before they become diabetic than men, and it has to do with the amount of fat cells men have on their body. Number one, they have less fat cells than women do. And then it depends on whether they have this hyperplastic type of fat cell that's creating more fat cells. So you can be very thin and be diabetic, type 2, or you can be extremely heavy and not, but both of them have this problem called insulin resistance. Okay. So there's a lot of studies. Harvard Medical School has done studies on this whole fat thing. BYU has done studies on adipocyte differences and fat storage, that just is different fat cells. But there's a lot of science out there that talks about exactly what I'm saying. So I want you to think of fat cells like parking lots now. So some people have a huge parking lot for space, hundreds of cars or fat cells, so they don't hit capacity quickly. And others have a tiny parking lot that fills up fast. And once it's full, cars start spilling over onto the streets in your organs and your bloodstreams, and that leads to metabolic problems. But even the fat cells with the guy with the big parking lot, say they have an event and that starts to overflow, it goes into the streets. I've seen this happen time and time again. You guys have seen it too. So some people have the ability to make more fat cells and other people don't, and that explains why two people can eat the same diet, look completely different. Now, I don't think I have the pictures up, you guys. I wish I did. I can show them later this week. But Karen, another friend of mine, has lost about 50 pounds. She wasn't as big as Jason was, and but yet she was heavily diabetic. And Jason's not the one. Cindy's the one I want to talk about, because Cindy was extremely obese and was not really being diagnosed as diabetic. And the difference between the two ladies, one twice the size of the other, the smaller one being insulin resistant and the bigger one, or diabetic, and the bigger one not, was this whole thing with fat cells. Okay. So they could eat the same diet, and Karen's going to get diabetic quicker than Cindy because of the way their fat cells respond and store energy. And you guys need to know this. If you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to manage yourself, you got to understand some of these things, because everybody kind of hits you with a one size fits all approach. And like, I had this amazing coach who coached IFBB pros and who coached powerlifters. And he was like, I'm going to fix you, Misha. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to help you get rid of that weight once and for all. I'm going to write your programming. I'm going to write your meal plans. I followed his stuff for 3 months. And after 3 months, we checked in and it wasn't working. And I followed it to a T. No, I didn't go home and have donuts. No, I followed it to a T and it didn't work. Not everybody's built the same. Some of those programs, especially when they're telling you to eat every 2 hours, are not going to do you good. They're actually going to harm you, because remember, insulin, which is creating fat storage, takes 8 hours to come down. Another little caveat is, when scientists took a look at this whole eat every 2 hours thing, does anybody have an idea of how many times a day people are actually eating? So every 2 hours would be about 6 meals a day, right? 6 small meals is what they're telling you. Do you want to know how many times a day people actually eat when they're being told to do that? Does anybody have a guess how many times it is? Type it in the chat if you have a guess. because it was mind-blowing to me and devastating. But the average time amount of times that people are eating in a day is 16 times a day. Every time you throw a handful of nuts in your mouth, every time you eat a small bag of chips, every time you have that latte, every time you have something that's consuming calories, you're eating, and we're doing it about 16 times a day, which means like we just have this. Somebody must just have a tray of stuff that they're carrying around and just like constantly eating. Like how do we get to where we're eating 16 times a day? Because we're given bad advice and we're given food that's causing this insulin resistance thing, so now we have an energy disparity and we just are hungry and tired all the time, but we're getting heavier and heavier because our cells can't use the energy we're taking in. And that eating 16 times a day is making it worse. Okay. So men and women have different fat storage, right? We talked about that. Most men have less fat cells than women, and most men do not have the hyperplastic type of fat cells. Now, some men do have that. So men are going to become more diabetic quicker than women. However, as we age, that kind of reverses. Now, menopause starts to mess with hormones, and women start to see a lot of diabetes. The two times women see diabetes or this high level of insulin resistance the most is in menopause and in pregnancy. And I've done talks on that. We'll talk about that another time. So, did you guys know that? That I mean, and did you I mean, maybe you knew it, but maybe you didn't think about that there's a difference in the way men and women store fat or even how many fat cells we have to store fat in. So women, when you're always looking around and you're like, that's no fair. This guy's eating and he just has a different metabolism and he's not putting on weight. But you know what I found is that even thin men are becoming diabetic because of the same food that we're ingesting is making us fat. So remember, we've got to start emptying our fat storages. So think about it like a bank account. Women, we get a little tricky, right? So a guy, like I think back at my marriage, my ex had his bank account and that was it. And he just kept putting money in there. And I would hide money in different places because he would try to his idea was his money was his and my money was ours. So I got creative in ways to hide that. But your fat storage is like that. So men are there, all their storage is in one bank. Women, we tend to like create these little accounts everywhere and we just have more available to us than as a parent. We just have stored it in different places. Same thing is going on in our fat cells. Thanks, Louise. So, needless to say, he is an ex, and he carried that problem on to his new marriage, but not my problem. So, let's move on. So, I talked a little bit about Cindy. Now, Cindy was huge, and she knows it, and we all know it. She's lost over 100 pounds with the system and actually got her size down and her health back. Her husband was thin, but he had a little bit of a pot belly, right? So her husband was thin, diabetic type 2, numbers out of control. She was extremely heavy, um, bigger than I ever was, and she wasn't even diagnosed as diabetic yet. That's a difference between men and women. Now, one clue there was that her husband had that pot belly, right? If your belly's starting to poke out, that's an insulin resistance problem. So even if you're thin and you're like, well, I don't have this problem, but your belly's poking out, yes, you do have the problem and you need to start paying attention. Okay. But Cindy's story was she's lost well over 100 pounds. She has got her life back, saved herself from ever getting the diagnosis of diabetes, but also saved her husband from his diagnosis of diabetes because he's no longer considered to be diabetic by his numbers. Crazy? With one simple protocol, not medications. That's not what saved it for them, understanding these principles. And they didn't even understand it at first. You guys, you don't have to understand all this. Some people like me do. But, and in fact, in the beginning, I didn't understand any of this. I just knew that I was dying and I was getting fatter every year and I needed to change that. And I saw somebody talking about it just like I'm talking about it. And I was like, I need this. I want to try it. So we're going to go over it in just a minute. All right. what if it wasn't medications? What if you could lose that weight? What if you could feel better while you're losing the weight? What if you didn't have to be on super restrictive diets and programs that kept you feeling like you can't sustain it? Because I know so many people, and especially the people that I've worked with, who said, I could never do this. I'm a food addict. I can't do this. I can't intermittent fast. I can't go without my carbs. I can't go out with my morning coffee. I can't do any of it because I just can't. You guys, my son used to talk to me about intermittent fasting and some of this stuff, and I'd be, yeah, that sounds great. I've heard a lot about it. Sounds like an amazing thing, but I didn't feel like I could do it either until I did this protocol. So the protocol is like this, you guys. It's number one, we're not doing taking stuff away from you. We're not giving you something that's unsustainable. We're not giving you medications that are causing damage to other organs. We're simply supporting your body and putting back in what's been stripped out by the food industry. So I have 2 of these teas a day. Now, because it's not medication, this is my 3rd tea in this cup. I had 2 this morning already. I've had a busy day. It gives me energy. It gives me mental clarity. It's helping me. I'm in a fasted state right now. It's helping me promote human growth or growth hormone. It's helping me produce ketones. And guess what? When ketones are out, you're burning fat. But you have to stop eating for ketones to come out. And I'll explain that in just a second. But this is my 3rd tea a day. And I've had like 6 of these in a day. No ill effects because it's food, it's nutrition. That cup of tea has every vitamin and mineral in it needed to sustain life. Because it's concentrated, it has it in a high amount. So now we're looking at 40 to 70% less nutrients in our food, and that's causing us to feel sick. You guys, I also distill my own water because I want all the crap that's in our water system out. And, everybody's like, oh, well, you're going to become mineral deficient. Between the 2 products and the high amount of vitamins and minerals in there, I don't have problems with mineral deficiency at all. So that's the 2 tea in a day, one first thing in the morning instead of that cup of coffee. You can have coffee too, but I would start with the tea, and then another tea at any point in the day when you feel like you need more energy. Now, I still have a really busy day ahead of me, and I'm fasting, and guess what? I can have both of these in a fasted state, and it's just going to help my body with that cellular repair and those ketones that are coming out for energy in a fasted state. That doesn't kill my fast like a diet soda, juice, any other drink would do. Okay. The second part is a pre-meal drink that has those 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers. They're specifically in there because these fibers are known to help your metabolic health. They're in there because they slow down blood sugar spikes. They're in there because they're helping you clean all of this out. So now, even if you do, my kids are gonna, I go to my kid's house tomorrow, and my daughter-in-law is an amazing cook, but everything she cooks is high in carbohydrates. In fact, they felt so bad that I've been taking my grandson for the last year every weekend, and I just buy all the groceries, and they're like, you know what, groceries are expensive, and Nana's feeding our kids what 8 to 10 days a month. So they brought me over groceries, and they were doing my son was better. He brought me chicken sausages with apple and Gouda in them. But she picks out things like these little croissants with ham and cheese. They're good, but they're a lot of carbohydrate and very little protein. And they brought some other things like that. So yes, I'll eat them, but I'll just make sure that I have that fiber drink before. The pre-meal drink will lower a glucose spike up to 40%. And that means your insulin's never going as high. That means you get into a state where you can burn fat much easier. And for most people, it just looks like this. I want to go over the timeline really quickly. When you eat, remember you're spiking your blood glucose. So it takes about 2 hours for that spike to show up fully in your bloodstream. Nothing in your body just happens immediately, or I should say, not much happens immediately. But it takes about 4 hours for that glucose spike to come down. So now, if you've eaten something else in that 2 hours, guess what? You spiked your glucose back up, and you delayed this whole process even longer. So 4 hours the glucose comes down, but when your insulin is out, it takes up to 8 hours for that to come down. And if you're really insulin resistant, it could take 10 or 12 hours for that insulin level to go to sleep. Now, insulin is one side of the metabolic story, and this other hormone, glucagon, is the other side. When glucagon is out, it's helping you pull fat out of your cells, and so you can burn fat. When insulin is out, it's storing fat. So we have to get the insulin level down so glucagon can come out because it's catabolic. It wants to eat everything up. So that's like bad cells in your system. That's like fat cells. So the glucagon only comes out about 2 hours after insulin goes, "Oh, hey, they're not eating. I don't need to be out anymore." And so then the insulin level drops. Glucagon goes, "Ooh, it's a safe space now. Insulin is gone. I can come out and do my job." 10 hours after your last bite of food before glucagon shows its head, and that's the hormone that helps you burn fat. So if you're being told to eat 6 meals a day, it may work a little bit, but they're also highly restricting your calories, and that's not the way to do this. You guys do not have to do a 1,500 calorie or 1,000 calorie diet to do this. And by the way, when you restrict those calories, it down ramps your metabolism, and that metabolism change can happen in just 4 weeks. But you know what? It can take 6 months for that to come back up to a normal level for you. So if you now take a 2,000 calorie diet and don't understand why that's causing you to store fat because you're eating all the time, and you dampen it down to 1,500 calories, within a month, your metabolism goes, "Oh, this is what we're working with. I'm only going to be set up to burn 1,500 calories." And it takes a long time to reverse that. So then you're stuck, right? But now glucagon comes out a couple hours after glucagon comes out. So that's at hour 10. At hour 12, your body says, "Oh, hey, we need energy. Glucagon is out here queuing energy." Guess what's happening? Growth hormone and ketones are being queued. That's at about hour 12. Okay. Again, nothing happens quickly in the body. So now at hour 12, those hormones come out and you're ready to burn fat for fuel. But it takes about 2 hours for those hormones to get distributed through the body so that you can start to burn fat for fuel. And that happens at about hour 14. So if you're wondering why we talk about intermittent fasting, this is why. At between hours 14 and 16, you have 2 hours where your body's really in fat burning stages. And it all has to do with stopping putting food in your mouth all the time. Okay. So that's why intermittent fasting. Now, what happens is you wake up in the morning. Okay. You go to bed, you have dinner at 6, right? So remember, 12 hours is where glucagon and ketones, or glucagon is out, growth hormone is out, ketones are out. So 6 at night, 6 in the morning, that's 12 hours, right? Instead of waking up at 6 in the morning and having a coffee and a bagel and cereal, which is going to spike your glucose right back up before any of those hormones have been able to do their job, you have this tea that's helping that production of growth hormone and ketones. And ketones is a source of fuel for your body and your brain. By the way, it's a source of fuel. Okay, it's telling you to burn fat. When you're burning fat, you have ketones up. You can't have high levels of ketones and have high levels of insulin at the same time. You want to burn fat, you got to get the insulin down. Now, so we have this tea in the morning. It does not spike your insulin. It helps with all the actions of the growth hormone and the ketones. And so now you're starting to get into the state um, where you just feel like you have this clean energy. You're burning fat. You're starting to feel leaner. You're starting to feel more energy, just more mental clarity. You guys, you don't get hangry when you're fasting unless you're extremely insulin resistant. It may take a few days or a week or two for you to start getting over that feeling. That's your body having some disparity because it's so used to you dumping sugar in it. The other thing is the uh, the pre-meal drink. I did a little test a couple of years ago because I was doing some long-term fast playing with things. And I said, well, what happens if I take, because at that time nobody talked about it. What happens if I take the pre-meal drink during my fast? And I'm measuring my ketones because remember, if my ketones are down, my insulin level is down. Your blood sugar levels are going to rise and fall throughout the day, even when you're not putting food in your face. Even on a water fast, your glucose levels are going to rise and fall because your body's burning fat, putting more energy in your system. And so your blood sugar levels, mine would bounce between like 60 and 120. And I hadn't eaten anything. But I started testing ketones, and I checked with a metabolic scientist, and Ben Bickman actually, and he said, "You're absolutely right." So what happens when I have this in a fasted state, which I haven't had mine today, I'll go have it after this call, is this provides fuel for your probiotics. Okay. So it's called a prebiotic, besides all the amazing stuff it does. Now, when you drink that, you have something called short chain fatty acids come out. That's helping produce more ketones. That's helping your body to go, oh, hey, we need more ketones. Besides feeding the gut, besides keeping your blood sugar down, besides keeping your system clean, besides dealing with all of that, it's helping with these short chain fatty acids, which are helping you get into a fat burning state. So now when I fast, I have both the tea and the fiber. Right now I'm doing, it'll be a 48-hour fast. I like to do them every once in a while. And so I won't eat again until tomorrow night when I go to my kids' house. And my daughter, who knows what she'll be cooking. But you know what? When I get there, I'll just have another one of these before she cooks, reduce my blood sugar spike by about 40%. And it allows me to keep my insulin levels down and keep everything else in my body healthy. There's so many stories. I had a friend who I used to power lift with, and he wrote me and was interested. He goes, but I have kidney problems. And so I can't have, I'm on a high carb, low protein diet, and I'm not a doctor, but everything that I know now, everything that I've studied, I'm looking at comments over here. YouTube is such a wild place. Everything I've studied shows me that insulin resistance and high amounts of glucose are what's causing those kidney problems. In fact, I have one guy that's featured in some of my stories that had stage 3 kidney disease, and all he's done is the protocol, reversed his stage 3 kidney disease, prevented himself from going into dialysis, which is what he was preparing for, and now has a much healthier life. His wife does it. He does it. For me, it's me, my daughter, 2 of my grandkids are using the system. And it's just helping keep us all healthy and helping us keep our weight under control. Can kids use it? Yeah. My granddaughter at 11 years old was starting to put on weight, and I noticed some of the other signs on her, like dark skin patches, and I noticed that she was eating fruit all the time, but not really getting in any protein. So I took her in and got her blood sugar tested, and sure enough, she was pre-diabetic. She was overweight. She was having mood and anxiety problems. She was having memory problems. We got her on the system, and she still is doing it today. And her pre-diabetes is gone. That excess weight that she was packing on as a young child was gone. It's easy. She just knows that she's taking this drink before she eats, and that's it. And then she manages the rest of what she does. She no longer eats a ton of fruit, you guys. High amounts of fruit will actually cause you to have liver problems and insulin resistance. Okay. So if you're a mom and you want a more natural way to address what's going on with your kids, this can help them too. You guys, it's just 2 products, a tea that I drink in the morning, and then actually I say this all the time, but I mix mine up both in one big mug, in about a 40-ounce mug, and then I just sip on it throughout the day. So one of my big goals every morning is go make your tea. I have ADHD, so I have to remember stuff. And I still forget sometimes, but it's like the first thing I do, go make your tea. Then I carry this mug around with me all day, and I just sip on the tea. But I'm not drinking sodas. I'm not drinking all of that stuff anymore. I don't have to rely on Bang Energy, Monster Energy, any of those things to get energy throughout the day, which are actually making insulin resistance worse. I have clean energy. I'm able to keep my weight under control. I'm able to keep my energy levels, my mental clarity under control, my joints under control, all of that stuff. You guys, this is why I spend all of this time talking about different diseases and disorders that are linked to insulin resistance, because I think that most people think of insulin resistance just as diabetes, but they don't think about it as hypertension. They don't think about it as ADHD. They don't think about it as psoriasis. They don't think about it as joint problems. They don't think about it as gut problems. They don't think about it as bleeding teeth and gums or eyesight problems or your hair falling out on your head and ladies growing excess facial hair on your. They don't think about it in skin problems like laxity in skin. Yes, excess sugar makes your skin sag and wrinkly. It's not just smoking. Okay. As you get older, your skin doesn't just fail because, back in the day, everybody was a smoker. High amounts of sugar will make you have smoker skin because you're not getting energy into your cells. So that's it. It's just, you guys, if you're interested in it, it's in my profile link. I will drop it over on Facebook and YouTube. But maybe I can take a look at this. I can't screen share for you guys on Facebook and YouTube, but just use that link that I just put in and that will get you to my landing page. For the rest of you guys, let's take a look at what I'm talking about because some people get confused and I know I have a lot of people say, I want to get it. How do I get it? Where do I get it? So let's move this camera. Oops, I opened up the wrong thing. Let me get my head under control here. This is what I want. And this is what I want. Okay. So we're going to go like this. Bye, guys on YouTube. By the way, come back tonight. We're going to have medical professionals talking in depth about the protocol tonight, why it's needed, what it does. Come back tonight and watch me. That's happening at, I believe, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll go over all the details about the system. Okay.